Did you ever want to toss one back with Kerouac? Get a little smashed with Ogden Nash. Start to read with Danielle Steele. Slosh some gin with Anna Eastman. It's time to get lit-faced while you are day drinking with authors.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Day Drinking with Authors, the podcast series where I pick a book, the author picks a drink, and we discuss both. I'm your host, Molly Fader. A few years ago, Kirsten Miller wrote a book called The Change, and it exploded into my life and the zeitgeist like a lightning strike. It was a book I could not stop talking about. It was a book I could not stop recommending to friends. It was about 3 women who go through menopause and discover that they have magic powers and start to solve crimes and get revenge on very, very bad men. It is obviously a huge inspiration for my book, Lady X, that's coming out in May. Latest book, The Women of Wild Hill, came out. I could not wait to have her on the podcast to talk about her amazing process and the books that she writes. I'm going to read the back cover copy because my mom likes that. Mom, you'd like this book. It's weirdly funny. Like, she's tackling such huge issues, and it is darkly, yeah, it's dark and funny. These are amazing books. If you haven't read Kirsten Miller, now's your time. The Women of Wild Hill, a witty, spectacular, and timely tale of modern-day witches waging war on the patriarchy from fan favorite Kirsten Miller, the author of The Change and Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books. There are few places on earth where nature's powers gather. Girls raised there are bequeathed strange gifts. A few have powers so dark that they fear to use them. Such a place is Wild Hill, on the tip of Long Island. For centuries, the ghost of a witch murdered by colonists claimed the beautiful and fertile Wild Hill, until a young Scottish woman with strange gifts arrived. Sadie Duncan was allowed to stay. 5 generations of Sadie's descendants called Wild Hill home, each generation more powerful than the last. Then, in the aftermath of a terrible tragedy, the last of the Duncans, once prophesied to be the most powerful of their kind, abandoned their ancestral home. One of them, Brigid Laguerre, I butchered that, of course, moved to California and turned her dark gift into fame and fortune. Her sister, Phoebe, settled on a ranch in Texas where women visit in secret for her tonics and cures. Phoebe's daughter, Sybil, has become a famous chef. Seemingly powerless, Sybil has never been told of the Duncan bloodline. Now Brigid, Phoebe, and Sybil have been brought to Wild Hill to discover their family legacy. The old one, furious at the path mankind has taken, has chosen 3 powerful witches to turn the tide. The Duncans will fulfill their destinies, but if only if they can set aside their grievances and come together as a family. I just can't stop with the witches. And now I'm just thrilled to have Kirsten Miller here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have Kirsten Miller here today. Thank you so much for coming to join us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Molly. I'm happy to be here.
So the first thing we have to talk about, the cocktail you've picked is a dark and stormy.
Yeah, straight out of the book.
Straight out.
When you asked, I was like, well, what else am I going to choose? Actually, I do love them. I drink a lot of dark and stormies. So.
Well, I was going to ask, some people pick things that they've put in the book because it's a drink they at the time are obsessed with. And I was going to ask, is this a drink that you enjoy on the regular?
I do. I've not had one. You know what? I might have one tonight just to celebrate the podcast. But I do love them. It reminds me of Jamaica. It's like it feels a little Daphne du Maurier. Like, it's just sort of like, there's something about it. It's a drink with really cool vibes, I think.
Totally agree. Yeah. And like a great drink for the start of the night when you're like, I could either go out and see people and talk, or I could go to bed, and you need a little shot of sugar to keep you.
Yeah. I'm so convincing myself that that's what I need. I'm totally going to make some dark and stormies tonight.
Well, it's a classic.
Hopefully just one. At my age, it's a one and done kind of situation.
When I started this podcast, it was during the pandemic, and we would drink during the day because what else were we going to do?
Why not, right?
And I can't even drink at night anymore. How quickly.
The sad thing is, so I get up really early. I start like today. I started working at around 5:30, so my day is done. Like I've put in like a good 10 hours or more by like 4:30. So I'm one of those early drinkers.
Early drinkers.
Don't call me at 6. I'll be like 3 sheets to the wind.
I'm so excited to talk about the Women of Wild Hill, and I'm excited to talk about your entire catalog. Obviously, you came into my life with The Change, and I feel like every book of yours I finish and I immediately turn to my friends and say, this is the book you need to read right now. And it's not just because of like the rage element or with The Change, the menopause element, but I feel like you take extremely loud things and make them simple. It's like, as I read your book, like I know I'm angry about something. We're all very angry about some things. And some of those things are so clear and I understand them and some aren't. And you have a way of clarifying why I'm angry. And my question for you is, are these the books that you need right now? Do these books help you clarify your sort of loud, difficult feelings as you're working?
All of my adult books are, because I started writing for kids and young adults, but my adult books are me working through issues. That's what they're all about. So The Change was written for myself, sort of looking around at the world and at my friends and colleagues, all of us sort of reaching, that horrible phrase, a certain age. And I was like, I don't understand why people dread this. This is the greatest time I've ever had. So, and I really felt like I'd come into my power in a lot of ways. So I wanted to write about that. And it was really working through all of those issues and trying to dispel a lot of those stereotypes that I thought were just complete BS and needed to be tossed. And then Lula Dean kind of came about it was a surprise. I stopped working on the Women of Wild Hill for a little while to write Lula Dean. And that was really, that was about me dealing with, my Southern heritage and a lot of the stuff that's going on in my hometown at the moment. And the Women of Wild Hill is wish fulfillment. It's I feel like, as a witchy woman, surrounded by other witchy women, I feel like we can take on the oligarchs and win if we want, so it was me kind of fulfilling my own dreams in a lot of ways.
Well, and then in turn, fulfilling your readers' dreams. Like,
yeah, well, hopefully.
I do feel a lot like The Change came about at the start of some really radical conversations about menopause and fiction about menopause. I draw a really great line between The Change and All Fours. I don't know if you've read the Miranda Julie book.
I have not, but I've been meaning to.
You should, because it's a woman dealing with menopause. It's bonkers. I think there's so much joy.
Oh yeah.
That those books tap into like this thing that we have been led to believe is not at all joyful and shouldn't be joyful. And it is.
Well, that was, so before I started writing The Change, I was reading something about menopause. Doesn't matter who the author is, but I just felt like it was so depressing and so, I don't know. There was just, it was this world of darkness. And I thought, God, this is not my experience at all. And I don't think this is the experience of a lot of women. And why are we buying into this crap? Like, why? Like, maybe some of this stuff, like, you become invisible or whatever, maybe that was true for our mothers or grandmothers' generations, but it certainly isn't true anymore. And yet we're still thinking about it in these ways, and we're still whispering the word, and we're still ashamed and, being secretive. And I just thought, God, this needs to stop. It really has to stop, because, why are we making younger women dread a time of their lives that actually ends up, for a great many of us, being the most exciting, the most fun, the most rewarding. It's like the third act. It's when you get to, you get to punish all the bad guys and solve all the mysteries, and like, it's like, what's to dread about that? It's the best part of the whole show. So.
When you started, so that was like a fascinating little tidbit to me, that you were working on the Women of Wild Hill and then took a break to write Lula Dean.
Yeah.
So when you started the Women of Wild Hill, was it always a plan to kind of revisit the women from the change with some cameos and some location?
Well, I had spent so much time kind of building this world, and constructing a world is hard because you have to know what the rules are, you have to know the setting, you have to know the people who live there, and I'd spent so much time crafting it, and I'd fallen in love with it, and I just, I loved this idea of, there's so many universe, Marvel has its universe of superheroes, there are a lot of these like worlds that, geeky, and I say that with love, geeky, type, go and, hang out. And then I was like, I'm a geeky type. Why can't I create my own universe filled with middle-aged witches? So I knew I was going to come back.
When you put it like that, why not?
Why not?
It shouldn't be novel. Yeah. Fantastic.
No. And so I'm like, yeah, so I loved it. I didn't want to write a sequel. One of the things, to me, all of the characters that I create are very real, and they live in my head. And I love the idea of bringing them back in ways as kind of little Easter eggs in future books for people who've, read other things that I've written. So, it was, I wanted to play in that world, but I didn't want to write a sequel. And it just seemed so appropriate to have Harriet wander through at, a couple of different points.
Naked.
And so I brought her back, but it was, so it was, I don't know. It was a lot of fun. And to be honest, I fully intend to return to that world at least one more time.
It's like, feels, the house has rooms to fill.
It's so, I could go on forever.
Well, I'll be reading them for sure.
But I have other bad guys to take care of. So,
one of the things and I think this is my geeky childhood too, like the assignment of powers to witches, to your characters, and that, this is the change. It's the Women of Wild Hill. Like, I can't imagine the delight. I don't, my writing doesn't go this way. I can't imagine the delight of like pairing the right person with the right power and how those two things form each other. But and I want to hear all about it. And this is one of those things that, here's the question, but it's a bigger question. But is it also a trap? Like, do you get like halfway through the book and you're like, oh, she needed to be able to fly, or, something along those lines?
I've given a great deal of thought throughout my life to superpowers. It's one of those things, like I have thoroughly thought it through, and I have I'm also a huge consumer of all sorts of other like films and books and whatnot in which people have superpowers, and I've seen where things go wrong. Like the last thing you want is to give a character a power that makes them omniscient or omnipowerful, because then there's no story there. It just all falls apart. It's you want every hero to have a very specific power, and you also want them to have a set of flaws or rules or whatever that put limits on that power, and so I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and it's just so it's when I was coming up with the powers for the change, I obviously wanted powers that I thought, because my books aren't fantasy, they're more magical realism. And so I wanted powers that felt very like they could be real, and also powers that felt like they might be something you would develop with age. So that sort of the rage of perimenopause and menopause being channeled and turned into great strength, or, fiery, whatever.
Yeah.
And, in the Women of Wild Hill, it was really thinking about this family and sort of how the powers each of them possessed would sort of work within their time, in the time that they're living, and also within the family. They're all pulling, these little, I was, DNA and blood is sort of a recurring theme in the Women of Wild Hill, and how, because I've always thought, of DNA as almost being like a treasure chest, like all of the gifts and all of the treasures and all of the curses that your family has ever had are right there in your DNA. And so each of these women, as they're born and as they're raised in this family, are kind of plucking their gift out of this treasure chest. And each time they pluck a gift, it obviously comes with every blessing comes a sacrifice. So it was a lot of fun playing with all of that stuff. But you have to have the limitations that go with the gifts. You have to have the curses that go with the blessings. Otherwise,
that's where the
it's
story.
boring. Yeah.
So did they, in your creation of the family, did they change at all?
Did they change it all? Yeah, the two main, so there are three main characters. Two are sisters, and one is the daughter of one of the sisters. And the sisters changed a lot. Like I could not, for some reason, I couldn't get the right balance with them from the start. I toyed with those two characters for a long time until I felt really happy with who they were. Like I always knew I kind of wanted the Queen of the Dark, side of it. I always wanted somebody, one of them to have this gift with animals. Like I knew sort of things that but getting the balance right was really, really tricky. And one of the problems was I started off with the two witches, and it became very clear at a certain point that with witches, there always have to be three. There always has to be that third. And that's where I was like, oh, there has to be a daughter. There has to be a final sort of, we need to see the generation beyond them as well. And that's when it really came together. So those three ended up going through a lot of changes, but the others, like, they came pretty naturally. It was sort of, I kind of saw them as they stepped forward, and they didn't change all that much at all, but the three main characters definitely did.
So when these changes are happening, are you in the process of writing? Are you editing, or are you still in that, like?
I try not to. I mean, with this book, I was well into the process of writing. I scrapped quite a bit of work because I didn't feel like the balance was right. And I hate doing that. I do prepare a lot. Oh, it's terrible. I do prepare a lot before I sit down and start writing because I don't like to waste time. And I had prepared this, I had my big long outline. I had everything thought through, but as I was starting to write, it just wasn't working. And so I ended up having to throw quite a bit out and start all over again.
Oh man, that's no good. That's no fun.
And that's why, like, honestly, I mean, I was well into the book by the time I paused to write Lula Dean. But I think that pause was, it's often quite good to, set something aside for a few months and then come back to it, because, a lot of those issues that you've been having, they always stay in the back of your head. And, when you get back to work, you often discover that a lot of those problems have been resolved.
Right. So when you're of your three adult books, when you set out to write these stories, are you what comes first for you? Are you truly trying to tackle an idea like, book banning? Are you trying to tackle an idea like menopause, tackle an idea like, the destruction of the planet by the oligarchs? Yeah. Like, is that the first thing, or how are you building these stories?
Well, the first thing is always anger. It's always rage. Like, rage is really what propels me forward. You know what I mean? But I mean, the rage always has to be tempered with optimism. And I also, my books are very angry, but they're also incredibly joyous at the same time. I like to compare them to that Beyonce video where she's got the baseball bat and she's breaking out the windows on all the cars, but she's having like the best time ever. Yes. Like that's how I want my books to feel. But yeah, it starts with anger. It's usually something I'm mad about. It's something that's either happened to me or something that I've, like an injustice that I see in the world or problems that I feel I want to address. And it starts with that. And then there's a character that ends up, sort of forming in my head. And, it's often not the one that, you would imagine once the book is, for example, in The Change, the first character that came to me was Nessa. It was not Harriet. The book was very focused on Nessa for a long time.
Yeah.
With Lula Dean, the first person who came to me was Beverly Underwood. It was not Lula Dean. So it was just, it's sort of so there's a character that kind of shows up, who's kind of the answer to this anger, or is somebody who's dealing with it as well. And then honestly, the third thing is place. Place is incredibly important to my books. Yeah, I always have to. The setting is, I have to really feel the setting, and it has to feel almost like a magical place to me. And that's why so many of my books are set in New York City, because I truly consider New York City, my current home, to be the most magical place in the world. So I love writing about it.
And those, like a lot of your YA series is based in New York City.
Yeah, almost all of them are based in New York City. Yeah.
And so, you are a Southern. You were born in the South.
Sure. Yep.
So that makes sense for the Lula Dean.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you figure out how to do where The Change and Wild Hill,
Maddox,
yeah.
New York. So I grew up in a place in the mountains of North Carolina, which was where you had really extreme ends of the socioeconomic spectrum coming into collision. So we had, it's Appalachia. So, there's true, unrelenting poverty there. But it was also, my parents in their later, they were teachers initially, but then they opened a real estate agency. And a lot of the people that they were selling houses to and property to were incredibly wealthy people from Florida and Atlanta. So you had this clash of worlds was something that I wanted to recreate. Also, I was inspired by for The Change, the Jeffrey Epstein, stuff, and the fact that he was preying on girls who came from disadvantaged homes for the most part. So I wanted a place and I wanted it to be near New York, but I wanted a world in which those two extremes, where a billionaire might end up brushing shoulders with, somebody who lives in, a mobile home. Right. And Long Island is that place. And so that's why I created this town, on the far outer eastern tip, to sort of serve that function as this place where these different walks of life end up, being in the same supermarket.
Yeah. And there is the natural world around it does feel very magical. Like it feels like it's kind of the spit, like there's one way in, one way out, like, the ocean of it all, it really does.
And Long Island, that part of Long Island is quite magical. It's really beautiful out there. And also it's funny, to talk about as somebody who lives in New York, and especially people who from Long Island, it's very funny to talk about Long Island as a magical world. Like people find that amusing. Especially people from Long Island.
When you go and visit Jersey and you come back from New Jersey and you're like, New Jersey's beautiful, and no one believes you because it's got this, you're like,
as long as you're not driving from New York City to through Elizabeth. Yeah.
Right.
The rest of it's great.
One of the things that I'm always amazed at with your work is, or I get struck by at some point in every one of your books, is how many very careful lines you seem to walk, or the way that things are balanced. Like you're balancing, witches fighting the patriarchy who's destroying the world, but you're also telling very complicated
and very sad family stories. You are doing, murder, but your characters are funny, and like you said, they're very hopeful. So can you talk about how you balance some of these very different things and how hard it is either writing or editing to keep that balance level?
Yeah, it is hard during, it's not something you can outline.
Yeah.
So it is something that you have to do while you're writing. And it does take, what it takes is it's sort of, it's just this kind of process of going back over and over and over and adding in details. I have two metaphors that I use for my writing process, and one of them is painting a portrait. You don't paint the lace on the portrait first. You do a sketch, and then you color in the background, and then you do the figure, and then at the very end you end up adding the lace and the shimmer on the pearls or the whatever. And so it's this incredibly, it's a very time consuming process of just going over and over and over.
Sorry,
That's all right.
My dog got excited about a squirrel.
My cat is sitting right in front of me, and I'm just waiting for him to do something terrible. He's looking at me with malice in his eyes.
Right.
But like I say, it's just a matter of going back over and over and over, and so that's something that balance is something that just comes through in the course of that process. It's a matter of a lot of work and kind of feeling your way through it. But when I set out to write about, because I knew there were a lot of subjects that I want to speak to that scare the hell out of people, right? So violence against women, especially young women, sexism in various ways, even sort of a lot of the stuff about, my Southern heritage that's in Lula Dean. These are not necessarily things that a lot of people want to think about. And so to lure them in, I wanted them to have a good time. I did not want anybody to feel like they were being lectured or browbeaten. I wanted them to feel like they had made this willing choice to come into this world and have a lot of fun and face a bit of darkness as well. And so that was very much a conscious decision. It was just sort of, I feel like it is much, much easier. I mean, as the saying goes, a little bit of sugar makes the medicine go down. You know what I mean? And so that's what I was trying to do. But it's, that's the hardest thing about my books, is making sure that balance ends up right.
Do you have a rule of thumb while you're brainstorming or working on it about, there's always a female character who's a bit like, fuck it, let's burn it down. And she's, funny and sharp and, witty. And I feel like that gives a lot of light to some of these things. But are there rules of thumb? Do you feel like things you try to keep in mind as you're working on these things to try to keep that lightness forefront?
Well, like I said, so humor is one of those details. Humor is often the last thing, that ends up being added. All of the funniest little bits are, those are things that, as I'm reading through a manuscript, I'm like, I'm cracking myself up and thinking, wouldn't it be funny to make this joke here? It's the last little bit, because I feel like I've already gone through that emotional process of getting all the darkness down on the page. And now I can add the little spots of light.
Yeah. It's like the scene in Wild Hill where they're trying to get people to eat these mushrooms. It just seems like they when they just kind of keep missing. It's almost like hijinks. It's almost like slapsticky for a second there, and it was it's definitely
and yet it's all about murder.
I know. And yet it's all about murder. The other thing that I really appreciate in your books and marvel at is and wonder how you kind of keep these things contained is within this larger story. You tell a lot of little stories, like you have a lot of almost vignette sort of things, in the change. It was the stories about the victims in the Lula's in the Lula book,
Lula Dean,
Lula Dean's book. It's, as these people are reading these books, the effect it has on their life. And I'm wondering, and in Wild Hill, the stories about the other witches, do they ever take over? Do you ever have to like how much of those do you have to cut? Like, because it seems like I could read them and it feels like you could write them forever.
I could. And I think that was one of the things that I learned really early on, was that if I am having a really good time writing something, odds are somebody's going to have a really good time reading it. And so the change when I feel like I discovered what you're talking about, this vignette thing that I've been doing. I feel like I discovered it with the change, which was really kind of a straightforward narrative at first. And I sent it to my agent, who I've had for about 20 years, and I love her. She's a firecracker. And she was like, she made the point that she wanted to get to know Joe and Harriet a bit better, because remember, it was focused largely on Nessa at the very beginning. And so I started writing their backstories, and I just had so much fun with that. And it was such a mental challenge that I thought, I want to know the backstory of every woman that pops up in this book. Even if it's like a short little thing, I want to know how she got to where she is in this story. And it worked so well with, the themes of the book and the message of the book and my personal mission, which is, to make sure that no woman is commodified, no woman is overlooked. And, as I was writing them, I thought, wow, this really works with what I'm trying to do. But also, I just love telling these stories. And so when it went to my editor, I expected her to cut, because it was, the change is a long book. And she was like, no, I like it. And I was like, okay, great. So, it's worked well for me. And I just, I was like, if a book is a long journey, it's like driving across country, and you're trying to get from point A to point Z. The most fun is always when you take those little side routes and stop to see the caves in Kentucky or the giant dinosaur in Arizona. You know what I mean? It's just sort of like, it's the little weird little stops along the way that end up giving that overall trip, so much of its flavor.
So last year before the election, when I was reading and interviewing authors, I had a lot of energy around witch stories, because I really believed that women were going to show up and save us, and they didn't.
Yep.
but now I find like I'm reading yours, and then I have a couple of other books lined up in there, witches again, because I just can't let go of the idea that women are going to save us.
I do. So I have a theory about the witch books.
Okay.
You'd like to hear it. Okay.
Yes.
And it's not, it's a theory, but I feel like it's more than that. I feel like it's pretty hard to argue with once you hear it. So there are a lot of witch books out there. And, when you write books about witches, people are always like, they see it as competition, right? It's sort of like, there are a lot of witch books out there. And I'm like, yes, bring them on. I want all the witch books. I want everybody writing books about witches, because first of all the witches are different. I don't see it as like, I would defy anyone to find a book in which there are witches like my witches. It's a completely different thing. So, but what I think is happening is, I think witches are, somebody asked me what kind of witches my witches are. And I'm like, I have always seen witches as women with power they aren't supposed to have. Women with power that threatens the status quo. And, on the cover of the Women of Wild Hill, it says we're all witches now. And I believe that, because we are the most powerful generation in the history of the world. like in every single imaginable way, financial, political, social, whatever you want to say. We're the most, dangerous and powerful group. And, I don't think we quite have figured that out yet.
Yeah.
But that's where the witch books come in, because fiction is a place to experiment, right? It's a place where you sort of you figure out how far you can go and what's possible and all of this. And I really do believe that all of these witch books, not just the writers, but the readers, are women who are sitting back and are getting a sense of their power and are figuring out, what do we want to do with it? How are we going to use it?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a literary trend. I see it as a movement, a social movement.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. It's like we're all looking for, reiterating something I said before about how there are parts of your book that clarify, like I'm walking around just being mad about something, and I know this is wrong, but I can't figure out the language to describe why it's wrong. And then I read your book and I'm like, oh, that's why it's wrong. And I feel like these are like how-to books. Like we're reading how-to books about
that's what they're meant to be. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really powerful.
Like, and I felt the same way after the election. It was, and I kind of went quiet for a while because I had been so convinced that women would step forward, and they didn't. And I think that what we need to do, and looking back, it's just, I feel like we are still figuring out where we stand in the society and what we can do. And instead of feeling bad about the women who aren't along for the ride yet, we need to really move forward with the women who are.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be, full of rage and joy and hope. And we need to start pushing forward. And if we have all of those three things, there will be women who are going to join us.
Yeah.
Not everyone. We will never get everyone, but we will have enough to make all the changes that we want to see made.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
And I think you're right. It's the joy and the hope that gives the rage a place to go.
Yeah, it's like the frogs. It's like those frogs in Portland. How do you fight a fucking frog? You know what I mean? That's like it's the joy in that.
Yeah.
They're out there because they're mad, but it's the joy and the weirdness and the optimism. It's like that is the answer right there. I saw those frogs and I was like, they got it. That's it.
You're talking about the protesters who showed up in
the giant Christmas, the giant Halloween frog costumes. It's like, how do you fight a frog? You don't. And that's the kind. I'm not saying we all dress up like frogs, but it's just sort of like, we take the rage pushing us forward, but the joy is what's going to make people want to come and along for the ride. And the hope is what tells them that their efforts aren't going to be wasted.
Yeah. And we can't.
Those three things.
Yeah. You can't forget them. You can't lose one to make the other more powerful.
You have to have all of them. And that's I go online these days, and when I see people saying stuff like, things will never change, they'll always get away with it, nothing's going to make a difference. I'm like, words have power. Every time you say that, you make it possible.
Yeah. So
shut up. Start, and change it. It's like, they won't get away with it. This will make a difference. Even if I have to make sure personally that it does. Words have power. And, we need to find the optimism and the joy and the hope, or else.
Yeah, and use them.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like you alluded to something earlier about having more rage in your heart. I can't remember what it was, but what are you working on now?
I haven't found I need to find my spiel for it. It's sort of like, that's kind of one of those things that comes towards the end. But so I will tell you this, I told you that my books are the first inspiration is always rage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
Andrew Tate. I'd like that the whole manosphere and the trad wife thing and all of that sort of stuff. So it's another kind of, it's a funny satire, but it's sort of like it's kind of like a horror novel, a funny satirical horror novel set in the manosphere. How's that?
Sold. Can't wait. I can't wait. Well, that sounds incredible. It sounds incredible. I have a 19-year-old son, and every mother I know who has a son who's a teenager, and we've done everything we can to raise them in the world we want to, the world that we inhabit. But we know that the online world, and we know that the friends and stuff like that. And so you just wait for the whiff of the manosphere to come into your house, the mention of Jordan Peterson, you just wait for this like canary in the coal mine. And luckily my son is righteous on the right side. But man, it's terrifying.
It's a scary, it's a scary time. And one of the things that and what I'm end up focusing on this book is that there is a group of men who are purposely, and I mean, this is a strategy that's been used throughout history, purposely sort of dividing and conquering where men and women are concerned, turning men against women because it gives them, because of the financial gains that it affords them, because of the power that they get from it. It's just sort of, they are exploiting these young men in a horrible way. And, I just wish that more people could have their eyes open to that this is like, it's a con game. It's like, it's like, you're being used, so they're exploiting people's loneliness and unhappiness for their own personal gain.
Right. And making all of it worse. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to read it.
Kirsten, and I intend to give them all the punishment they deserve.
Thank heavens for that. Kirsten, thank you so much for coming to join us today. I hope you enjoy your Dark and Stormies tonight. Everyone out there, please go pick up one of these 3 books.
They're really delicious.
Actually, you're one of your YAs. I have not jumped into those yet, and I can't wait to.
Oh, the best one is How to Lead a Life of Crime.
How to Lead a Is this like the nerdy girls in New York City who are?
No, that's Kiki Strike. So those are great too. But if for anyone who has liked The Change and The Women of Wild Hill and whatnot, How to Lead a Life of Crime is great. Right. It's very, very dark as well.
Everybody go pick it up. Yep. Thank you again for coming to visit us. Everybody out there, pick up a book, have a drink, have a good night.
Thank you.